Hello, senior squirrels. Can you believe I read an entire chapter to the juniors just now, and I've got 2 chapters to read, and I didn't hit the record button, evidently. I cannot believe I did that. Oh, brother. Well, let's get on with chapter 11 and see how much I can get read, since I did just read a chapter to the kids. Dang it. Okay, I hope you all are having a good day, and we'll continue to have a blessed day after this reading, and we will be live today. Live at 5. Experiments is chapter 11. The 1st of June, the Kings are off to the seashore tomorrow, and I'm free. 3 months vacation, how I shall enjoy it, exclaimed Meg, coming home one warm day to find Joe laid upon the sofa in an unusual state of exhaustion, while Beth took off her dusty boots and Amy made lemonade for the refreshment of the whole party. Aunt March went today, for which, oh, be joyful, said Joe. I was mortally afraid she'd ask me to go with her. If she had, I should have felt as if I ought to do it. But Plumfield is about as festive as a churchyard, you know, and I'd rather be excused. We had a flurry getting the old lady off, and I had a scare every time she spoke to me, for I was in such a hurry to be through that I was uncommonly helpful and sweet, and feared she'd find it impossible to part from me. I quaked till she was fairly in the carriage and had a final fright, for as it drove off, she popped out her head saying, Josephine, won't you? I didn't hear any more, for I basely turned and fled. I did actually run and whisked round the corner where I felt safe. She was afraid she was going to say, won't you join me? I bet. Poor old Joe, she came in looking as if bears were after her, said Beth as she cuddled her sister's feet with a motherly air. Aunt March is a regular samphire, is she not? Observed Amy, tasting her mixture critically. Samphire. 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 Have to check that out. Oh, here we go. She means vampire. Not seaweeds. Oh, I guess that means seaweed. But it doesn't matter. It's too warm to be particular about one's parts of speech, murmured Joe. What shall you do all your vacation? Asked Amy, changing the subject with tact. I shall lie abed late and do nothing, replied Meg from the depths of the rocking chair. I've been routed up early all winter and had to spend my days working for other people. So now I'm going to rest and revel in to my heart's content. Said Joe, that dozy way wouldn't suit me. I've laid in a heap of books, and I'm going to improve my shining hours reading on my perch in the old apple tree when I'm not having don't say larks. Oh, she started to say when I'm not having don't say larks, implored Amy as a returned snub for the samphire correction. I'll say nightingales then. With Laurie. That's proper and appropriate since he's a warbler. Don't let us do any lessons, Beth, for a while, but play all the time and rest as the girls mean to. Oh, I can't read it today, proposed Amy. Well, I will if Mother don't mind. I want to learn some new songs, and my children need fixing up for the summer. I think she's talking about her dolls. They are dreadfully out of order and really suffering for clothes. May we, Mother? Asked Meg, turning to Mrs. March, who sat sewing in what they called Marmy's corner. You may try your experiment for a week and see how you like it. I think by Saturday night you will find that all play and no work is as bad as all work and no play. Oh dear, no, it will be delicious, I'm sure, said Meg complacently. I now propose a toast, as my friend and partner, Sari Gamp, says. Fun forever and no grubbage, cried Joe, rising, glass in hand, as the lemonade went round. They all drank it merrily and began the experiment by lounging for the rest of the day. Next morning, Meg did not appear till 10 o'clock. Her solitary breakfast did not taste good, and the room seemed lonely and untidy, for Joe had filled the vases. Joe had not filled the vases, Beth had not dusted, and Amy's books lay scattered about. Nothing was neat and pleasant but Marmy's corner, which looked as usual, and there she sat to rest and read, which meant yawn, and imagine what pretty summer dresses she will get with her salary. Joe spent the morning on the river with Laurie, and the afternoon reading and crying over The Wild, Wild World up in the apple tree. Beth began by rummaging everything out of the big closet where her family resided, her dolls. Now, this is Beth. I'm not sure. Let's see. I guess just the closet in her house. But getting tired before half done, she left her establishment topsy-turvy and went to her music, rejoicing that she had no dishes to wash. Amy arranged her bower, put on her best white frock, smoothed her curls, and sat down to draw under the honeysuckles, hoping someone would see and inquire who the young artist was. As no one appeared but an inquisitive Daddy Longlegs, who examined her work with interest, she went to walk, got caught in a shower, and came home dripping. At tea time they compared notes, and all agreed that it had been a delightful, though unusually long day. Meg, who went shopping in the afternoon and got a sweet blue muslin, had discovered, after she had cut the breadths off that it wouldn't wash, which mishap made her slightly cross. Went shopping and got a sweet blue muslin, which would be a dress. Had discovered after she had cut the breadths off, not sure what that is, B-R-E, like bread, T-H-S, which mishap made her wouldn't wash. I don't know. Joe had burnt the skin off her nose boating, so she got a sunburn, and got a raging headache by reading too long. Beth was worried by the confusion of her closet and the difficulty of learning 3 or 4 songs at once. And Anne deeply regretted the damage done her frock, for Katie Brown's party was to be the next day, and now, like Flora McFlimsy said, she had nothing to wear. But these were mere trifles, and they assured their mother that the experiment was working finely. She smiled, said nothing, and with Hannah's help did their neglected work, keeping home pleasant and the domestic machinery running smoothly. It was astonishing what a peculiar and uncomfortable state of things was produced by the resting and reveling process, so them not doing any chores. The days kept getting longer and longer. You know, when you don't have anything to do, I can't imagine a day without knitting or crocheting. That would seem like forever. The weather was unusually variable, and so were tempers. An unsettled feeling possessed everyone, and Satan found plenty of mischief for the idle hands to do. As the height of luxury, Meg put out some of her sewing, and then found time hang so heavily that she fell to snipping and spoiling her clothes in her attempts to refurbish them. A la Moffat, Jo read till her eyes gave out and she was sick of books, got so fidgety that even good-natured Laurie had a quarrel with her, and so reduced in spirits that she desperately wished she had gone out with Aunt March. Beth got on pretty well, for she was constantly forgetting that it was to be all play and no work, and fell back into her own ways now and then, but something in the air affected her, and more than once her tranquility was much disturbed, so much so that on one occasion she actually shook poor dear Joanna. One of her, are we talking about? No, this is Beth. More than once, she actually shook poor dear Joanna and told her she was a fright. Amy fared worst of all, for her resources were small, and when her sisters left her to amuse and care for herself, she soon found that accomplished and important little self a great burden. She didn't like dolls, fairy tales were childish, and one couldn't draw all the time. Tea parties didn't amount to much. Neither did picnics, unless very well conducted. If one would have a fine house full of nice girls or go traveling, the summer would be delightful, but to stay at home with 3 selfish sisters and a grown-up boy was enough to try the patience of a Boaz, complained Mrs. Malaprop, after several days devoted to pleasure, fretting, and ennui, E-N-N-U-I. No one would own that they were tired of the experiment, but by Friday night each acknowledged to herself they were glad that the week was nearly done. Hoping to impress the lesson more deeply, Mrs. March, who had a good deal of humor, resolved to finish off the trial in an appropriate manner, so she gave Hannah a holiday and let the girls enjoy the full effect of the play system. When they got up on Saturday morning, there was no fire in the kitchen, no breakfast in the dining room, and no mother anywhere to be seen. "Mercy on us! What has happened?" cried Jo, staring about her in dismay. Meg ran upstairs and soon came back down, looking relieved, but rather bewildered and a little ashamed. "Mother isn't sick, only very tired, and she says she's going to stay quietly in her room all day. Let us do the best we can. It's a very queer thing for her to do. She don't act a bit like herself, but she says it has been a hard week for her, having to do all the chores. So we mustn't grumble, but take care of ourselves. That's easy enough, and I like the idea. I'm aching for something to do, that is, some new amusement, added Jo quickly. In fact, it was an immense relief to them all to have a little work, and they took hold with a will, but soon realized the truth of Hannah's saying, "Housekeeping ain't no joke." I like that. Sounds like something Krista from The Secret Yarnery would say. Ain't no joke. There was plenty of food in the larder, and while Beth and Amy set the table, Meg and Jo got breakfast, wondering as they did so why servants ever talked about hard work. "I shall take some up to Mother. Though she said we were not to think of her, for she'd take care of herself," said Meg, who presided and felt quite matronly behind the teapot. So a tray was fitted out before anyone began and taken up with the cook's compliments. The boiled tea was very bitter, the omelet scorched, and the biscuit speckled with saleratus, but Mrs. March received her repast with thanks and laughed heartily over it after Jo was gone. "Poor little souls, they will have a hard time, I'm afraid, but they won't suffer. It will do them good," she said. producing the more palatable viands which she had provided herself, and disposing of the bad breakfast so that their feelings might not be hurt. A motherly little deception for which they were grateful. Many were the complaints below, and great were the chagrin of the head cooks at her failures. Never mind, I'll get the dinner and be servant. You be Mrs. Keep your hands nice. See company and give orders, said Joe, who knew still less than Meg about culinary affairs. This obliging offer was gladly accepted, and Margaret retired to the parlor, which she hastily put in order by whisking the litter under the sofa and shutting the blinds to save the trouble of dusting. Joe, with perfect faith in her own powers and a friendly desire to make up the quarrel, immediately put a note in the office inviting Laurie to dinner. You'd better see what you've got before you think about having company, said Meg when informed of the hospitable but rash act. Oh, there's corned beef and plenty of potatoes, and I shall get some asparagus and a lobster for a relish, as Hannah says. We'll have lettuce and make a salad. I don't know how, but the book tells. I'll have blancmange and strawberries for dessert, and coffee too, if you want to be elegant. Don't try too many messes, Joe, for you can't make anything but gingerbread and molasses candy fit to eat. I wash my hands of the dinner party, and since you have asked Laurie on your own responsibility, you may just take care of him. I don't want you to do anything but be clever to him and help with the pudding. You'll give me your advice if I get in a muddle, won't you? Asked Joe rather shortly. Yes, but I don't know much except about bread and a few trifles. You'd better ask Mother's leave before you order anything, returned Meg prudently. Of course I shall. I ain't a fool, and Joe went off in a huff of the doubts expressed by her powers. Woo! It's getting long. Oh, I wish I knew how to splice things together. Get what you like and don't disturb me. I'm going out to dinner, and don't worry about things at home, said Mrs. March when Joe spoke to her. I never enjoyed housekeeping, and I'm going to take a vacation today and read, write, go visiting, and amuse myself. The unusual spectacle of her busy mother rocking comfortably and reading early in the morning made Joe feel as if some natural phenomenon had occurred, for an eclipse, an earthquake, or a volcanic eruption would hardly have seemed stranger. Everything is out of sorts somehow, she said. She said to herself going downstairs. There's Beth crying. That's a sure sign something is wrong. Something is wrong with this family. Amy is bothering. I'll shake her. Feeling very much out of sorts herself, Joe hurried into the parlor to find Beth sobbing over Pip, the canary who lay dead in his cage, with his little claws pathetically extended as if imploring the food for want of which he had died. It's all my fault. I forgot him. There isn't a seed or a drop left. Oh, Pip, oh, Pip. How could I be so cruel to you? Cried Beth, taking the poor thing in her hands and trying to restore him. Joe peeped into his half-open eyes, felt his little heart, finding him stiff and cold, shook her head and offered her domino box for a coffin. Put him in the oven and maybe he'll get warm and revive, said Amy hopefully. Oh, God. He's been starved, and he shan't be baked. Now he's dead. I'll make him a shroud, and he shall be buried in the grave, and I'll never have another bird, never, my Pip. For I am too bad to own one, murmured Beth, sitting on the floor with her pet folded in her hands. The funeral shall be this afternoon, and we will all go. Now don't cry, Bethy, it's a pity, but nothing goes right this week, and Pip has had the worst of the experiment. Make the shroud and lay him in my box. And after the dinner party, we'll have a nice little funeral, said Jo, beginning to feel as if she had undertaken a good deal. Undertaken. Leaving the others to console Beth, she departed to the kitchen, which was in a most discouraging state of confusion. Putting on a big apron, she fell to work and got the dishes piled by ready. I can't read. And got the dishes piled up ready for washing when she discovered that the fire was out. Here's a sweet prospect, muttered Jo, slamming the oven door open and poking vigorously among the cinders. Having rekindled it, she thought she would go into market while the water heated. The walk revived her spirits, and flattering herself that she had made good bargains, she trudged home again after buying a very young lobster. Some very old asparagus, and 2 boxes of acid raspberries. By the time she got cleaned up, the dinner arrived, and the stove was red hot. Hannah had left a pan of bread to rise. Meg had worked it up early, set it on the hearth for a second rising, and forgotten it. Meg was entertaining Sally Gardner in the parlor when the door flew open and a flurry, crocky, flushed, and disheveled figure appeared, demanding tartly, I say, isn't bread riz enough when it runs over the pans? Sally began to laugh, but Meg nodded and lifted her eyebrows as high as they would go, which caused the apparition to vanish, and put the sour bread into the oven without further delay. Mrs. March went out, after peeping here and there, to see how matters went, also saying a sweet word of comfort to Beth, who, at making a winding sheet while the deer departed late, and for the bird. While let's see, Scourgy, no. Wait a minute. Winding sheet while the deer departed late, and a state in the domino box. A strange sense of helplessness fell upon the girls as the gray bonnet vanished round the corner, and despair seized them. When a few minutes later, Miss Croker appeared and said she'd come to dinner. Now this lady was a thin, yellow spinster with a sharp nose and inquisitive eyes, who saw everything and gossiped about all she saw. They disliked her, but they had been taught to be kind to her simply because she was old and poor and had few friends. So Meg gave her the easy chair and tried to entertain her while she asked questions, criticized everything, and told stories of the people whom she knew. Laurie cannot describe the anxieties. Language cannot describe the anxieties, experiences, and exertions which Jo underwent that morning, and the dinner she served up became a standing joke. Oh, y'all, I'm going to have to stop there. Golly Pete, I might have to read this over. I've done terribly reading this. Oh, just awful. I was up and down last night. Couldn't sleep, but I did sleep in late. So I thought I'd be okay, but I think maybe not. I think GrannyDee's going to take a nap. Love to you all, and I'll be back to read. Probably not read to the seniors again until tomorrow because I've got still 2 stories. Even though I already read one but didn't hit the record button. I can't believe I didn't do that. But I had to have not hit the red button. Love y'all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. I'll be live at 5. I hope. Mwah. Be sweet. Don't be ugly.